So let's talk a little bit about them, closed questions versus open questions, why they matter, how you can spot the difference, and what you should be doing to grow your ability to ask solid, coaching-oriented, open questions in the future. So let's talk real briefly about the nature of closed versus open. Really simple, straightforward. You probably are already aware. But closed questions close or narrow the scope of the answer a client can give, whereas open questions, there's not a closed off single answer reply that the client has to give. A closed question, you have to answer it with either yes or no, or you can kind of like, I don't know. But generally, it means that when you ask a question, it starts with things like do, did, are, is, have you. Questions like that, generally, they are going to lead to yes or no answers. Whereas open questions, in terms of coaching, generally the best coaching questions will start with who, what, how, or why. And now sometimes you will ask questions like when and where as a coach, but we try to avoid those too much because they tend to be a little bit more information-based instead of exploration. That comes in another video. But the best coaching questions, who, what, how, why, these are foundational tools in the tool belt of any coach. What are some examples? Let's start with that. And let's set on the table a sample agenda. A client comes to you working as a mid-level manager. They have some fellow peers who are involved in a project they are working on, and one of the peers is giving them some grief in the interactions that they have with leadership. Perhaps this peer is taking the spotlight away from the rest of the stakeholders as they give their joint presentation. They seem to be taking more credit, or they've just been a bit rude or offensive in some meetings or whatever it might be. This is a really common agenda that comes up. Now, let's say that that's the agenda on the table, that the client wants to work through how to have a difficult conversation or a crucial conversation around improving this relationship, correcting what's going on, better understanding what's happening, and getting on the same page and all that good stuff. Really solid agenda that the coach and client can explore and work towards an action plan on. However, let's run that agenda, post the agenda settings through a closed-ended frame, and then we'll circle back and do the same kind of process with open-ended questions. So with the agenda, I need to have a difficult conversation with my peer. Coach A asks questions. What did you try to talk to them about this already? Yes or no? Okay. No, I haven't tried to talk with them yet. Okay. Is there something in particular you need to ask or tell them? Are you worried about this conversation? Okay. Have you tried to point this out to them? Did you ever talk to your manager about the whole situation? Are you in conversation with your peers, your other peers, about how they're addressing this? Have you ever tried this model or approach? Have you ever just said it to him in the face, exactly what you need to say to him, and so on? A lot of these questions are really close to a solid coaching question. Now let's take a look at some alternative versions of these questions. So instead of things like, did you try to talk already? Is there something you need to tell them? What if we ask questions such as, what have you learned from what you've tried so far? Not even asking, what have you tried so far, but what have you learned from what you've tried so far that you'd like to maybe carry over into a future conversation? What do you most want to communicate to this individual? What are you feeling as you imagine this conversation? What are you experiencing? How might those feelings impact the way you approach the conversation? Things like that. What would happen if you simply pointed this out to this individual? How might you partner with others to help you prepare? Now, these questions go to a deeper level. And the key thing you'll notice here, this Coach B asking these questions is opening the conversation. There's no telling where things would go as a result of asking each of these questions. The client is free to respond however they'd like. So questions like, have you talked to your boss about this? It's a good line of questioning, but what would prevent the coach from asking, how much have you explored this topic with your manager? Oh, well, that's giving more openness to the conversation. Same idea, very same idea. And that's the thing about closed questions. They're oftentimes not bad, but they just aren't quite there. They're narrowing the scope unnecessarily. Whereas other closed questions, you might have heard some of those, there's this embedded suggestion that the coach is offering instead of just saying, hey, can I offer a suggestion? There's this model or framework that I've used, Crucial Conversations, with a lot of different people. Really fun process, useful process I found in my coaching. Would it be interesting for us to utilize that as you prepare for this coaching or this difficult, crucial conversation? That's a direct communication. That's not the most direct, maybe, but that's a direct communication offer that a coach can make instead of saying, hey, have you ever tried Crucial Conversations? Like, just say it. A yes or no question almost never supports the growth of the client near as much as an open question does. Now, I say nearly or almost always because, well, this is something you'll see throughout coach training and your growth as a coach. Early on in the process, coaches that are new in the field struggle with the things that they need to leave at the door about themselves. Maybe it's an approach that does utilize a lot of coaching questions, information questions, a lot of suggesting, a lot of, let's say, nervous tells, like, oh, I'm nervous about making this video or coaching sessions. I'm going to rub my neck, or I'm going to reach around here and scratch my back, or whatever it might be, and we'll do a video on that. But so much of coach training is, what do I need to let go of in order to be present and most useful for this client? Closed questions, it's one of those things. We drop it at the beginning of coach training. Lo and behold, about 2 years into the field or so, you begin to realize, wait, no, there's times to ask closed questions. Wait, there's a time and place when I need to interrupt my client. It's a good thing to interrupt my client. There's a time and place where asking a really direct question, like almost a painful question, can be very useful. Or making a suggestion or observation. At the beginning of my training, I was taught, don't do that. But here is how you do it. Throughout coach training, there is a letting go phase of the generally not the best approaches. But then you grow and grow, and you realize that there are unique situations where you introduce those things back in, like a closed question. A solid closed question could be, hey, client, are you going to do this? If I'm doing that question extremely rarely, that client is going to have a gut check. Oh, that is so painful to hear. But the coach asks it because they care and because it's good in that moment. But if every conversation I'm having with them, I ask closed question, then it's just noise and it's just direction. It's just pushing. So you see, closed questions are oftentimes pushing in, narrowing down towards the current reality of what this person's experiencing, whereas an open question is looking beyond the scope of the current reality. That's why open questions are often helping this person explore. But every once in a while, we want to just kind of kick. We want to poke. We want to help prod this person, this client or coachee, so that they have a gut check moment. And that might come with the closed question. But early in your experience as a coach, I would encourage you to recognize, yeah, we'll get back to that. For the most part, I need to track how many closed questions I have and try to narrow that number down as much as possible, so that in my coaching conversations, in my, in any kind of practice where others are observing, anytime I'm assessing my own session, I am tracking upwards, more open questions, fewer and fewer closed. In fact, if you're in this training program, that's one of the most basic first things to do, is to track how many open questions there are in the session that you're observing over closed questions. Most of the time, the more open questions that are present, the better the coaching session is. Hope this is helpful. It is, again, as a core starting point for any coach in the field. Track that progress. And as with all these videos, you'll hear me say it, it's not just about knowing these things. It's not just about knowing closed versus open. You have to hear it. You have to observe it and assess yourself and practice it intentionally. The reason many coaches, even if they have 10,000 hours in the field, can still struggle with closed questions is because they don't get enough feedback. They're not consistently having someone tune into their coaching, and then they have someone observe, and they're just floored that 30% of the session was closed questions. You need the feedback. You need the practice. That's why this entire channel, this entire training is practice focused. This is just introducing the concept. The training comes when you're practicing it with feedback and observation. Thank you very much for watching. Keep coaching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.